My name's Bob.
It's a good one. Good evening. I would like to call the Government Services Committee meeting for Tuesday, May 28th to order. Roll call, please.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here. Here. Weber, here.
I pass it. Did she leave?
I said Weber, here.
Weber.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Stay here.
We'll keep each other in check. How about that?
Thank you. We have a few items that we are pulling off the item. Just make sure I have this correct. 5H, 5K, and 5O. Do I have that correct?
H.
So we're pulling those items off the omnibus. With that, do I have a motion and a second?
Make a motion.
Second.
Moved by Jamie, seconded by Brian. Roll call, please.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So, do you want to 5H, the first one?
Or do you just want to wait till after?
Are we?
Order?
I thought we were going to go in.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I didn't know if you wanted to.
Oh, no.
I didn't know if you wanted to jump into it. No. Okay. So we'll come back to it. Good evening.
Good evening.
Item 5A, an update from IMEA Power Sales Contract. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening. Here we go again. So for the past 20 years, the City of St. Charles has received reliable, affordable, and sustainable electric power from the Illinois Municipal Electric Agency, otherwise known as IMEA. St. Charles has had power sales contract with IMEA since 2004, which is set to expire in 2035. So that's a total of a 30-year contract. In order to plan for and ensure that we have the resources in place to continue meeting our community's long and short-term power and energy needs, IMEA is requesting that St. Charles consider approving and executing a new power sales contract with IMEA from 2035 to 2055. Because of that request from IMEA, staff began a series of presentations and discussions with you several months ago, and will provide you with as much information as needed to make this important decision for our community. To date, we've shared some background information about your St. Charles Electric Utility. We've shared some background information about the Illinois Municipal Electric Agency. We also discussed why the IMEA is asking for the decision now with over 10 years left on our existing contract. And we reviewed the IMEA sustainability plan just last month. Tonight we're going to focus in on possible options or alternative to IMEA. But as always, we are willing to take any questions or comments that you have about the subject. Your continued feedback and questions are always welcome. So to get started on the topic tonight, we thought it would be best to outline some really broad stroke concepts about how Illinois municipalities like St. Charles may be able to secure long and short-term power and energy needs for their community. So we separated these concepts into three categories. If I did my job correctly, hopefully by now you're pretty familiar with Category A, which is the category that IMEA is under. It is called a Joint Action Agency, or JAA. Sometimes it's referred to as a municipally owned utility, and for short, sometimes we call the Joint Action Agency MUNIs. So a Joint Action Agency is a nonprofit agency owned by multiple municipalities, and in our case, 32 separate communities, who pool their buying power to provide wholesale power supply and related services from power generators through long-term contracts. That's really the basis of a Joint Action Agency. The second category we call a power marketer, and this is sometimes referred to as an investor-owned utility, and it is really serving retail choice customers. ComEd customers fall into this category. For example, power marketer is a for-profit company. It's often a trading company buying and selling electricity in wholesale markets. And then the third broad category is a municipal utility. This is an individual utility supplying its own needs. This is probably there's not as many municipal utilities as there are category A and B. So this is also a nonprofit entity owned by a single municipality. This is the category that I like to say they do it all. They have their own generation, they have their own transmission and distribution that they own. They're going at it alone, and they provide all of the resources necessary to supply their own energy. We'll get into the details of each one of these right now. So obviously one option for St. Charles is to maintain status quo. We can renew our contract with IMEA as a joint action agency. As far as we know, there is only one other established joint action agency in Illinois, and that is Northern Illinois Municipal Power Agency, otherwise known as NIMPA. Our friends to the south, Geneva and Batavia, are both members of NIMPA. And I suppose there is also one other option in this category, and that is for us to create and form our own joint action agency. IMEA was created at one point in time. NIMPA was created at one point in time, and there's nothing that says that we can't create a new joint action agency. We'd have to find a partner to do so, but that is certainly an option. So you've heard these words to nauseam by now, but the focus of a joint action agency is to provide long-term stability, affordability, reliability, sustainable electrical supply. Some of the features associated with a joint action agency is economies of scale and also shared expertise and resources. 32 communities bonding together to create an economy of scale, which allows us to do lower negotiated rates due to the large combined demand. And we can use the same resources. We've created an organization called IMEA. We have access to experienced personal folks that are in this business, and that's a shared resource for all 32 communities. The other feature with a joint action agency is transparency and local control. We've talked a lot about this. Utilities, municipalities like St. Charles have a voting right and oversight of all of the decisions that IMEA makes. IMEA is St. Charles. And it's also measured decision-making. We need consensus among the 32 member municipalities in making all the decisions for IMEA, not just like the measured decision-making that you all have to make on the dais. So ComEd customers in Illinois fit under this category called power marketer. I'll explain what that means in just a little bit in the next slide. But I also want to focus that there's actually one other option in regards to a power marketer, and that's called a competitive procurement process, and I'll also get into the details of that. The focus of a power marketer is to provide short-term bases using a market mix power supply. So a couple things about a power marketer is because they are shorter term contracts, typically only 3 years or less, there is potential for price volatility compared to a joint action agency like IMEA, who rarely goes less than a 10-year contract and sometimes even much longer than that. One of the benefits is that this power marketer category provides a variety of options or a broader range of energy sources and contract terms to choose from. That's a little different than IMEA. You generally have less control in a power marketer situation, and this is also a profit motive category. There's also supplier risk, and what I mean by that is that you are exposed to supplier reliability issues. There's a lot of players in this market, as the power marketer. There's just as if we were bidding out or building a public works facility, There's a lot of contractors and consultants that we have to vet through, and we need to get to know them. We have to be comfortable with them. It's the same in this industry where you have to get familiar with these suppliers and make sure that you do your due diligence before signing up in a contract with them. So before proceeding to the third category, I want to take just a little sidebar in regard to ComEd customers who fit into this power marketer category. This is really just for information and context only because, as we've discussed before, this is currently not really an option or alternative for St. Charles because we have our own electric utility. We would need to absolve our electric utility and all the benefits that St. Charles customers enjoy by having our own electric utility to be even considered in ComEd territory. That is well beyond the scope of this new power sales contract discussion, but I think it's good information for you to have as a comparison to IMEA and other alternatives that we'll talk about. So to start, it's important to remember that the company, ComEd the company, is a wires-only company. They do not have any power generation sources. In several ways, they are very similar to our St. Charles electric utility, who is responsible for the distribution of power to the customers, maintenance of all the electrical infrastructure in response to power outages, and a whole lot of customer service that goes along with that responsibility. So then if St. Charles customers get their power resources through the Joint Action Agency, IMEA, the question might be, where does ComEd customers get their power resources? And the answer to that is through the Illinois Power Agency, otherwise known as IPA. And I'm going to quote directly from the IPA website. The Illinois Power Agency was established in 2007 by Public Act 95-0481 and is an independent state of Illinois agency under the oversight of the Illinois Executive's Ethics Commission. The IPA does not itself generate or sell power. Instead, it was created to conduct the procurement of electricity for their eligible retail customers. So the next question is well, who are the eligible retail customers that IPA procures power for? And that's on this slide. Good, you get to stay here. So ComEd customers are customers of IPA. ComEd is generally in the north part of Illinois. Ameren is mid-state Illinois and south. And there's a smaller group called Mid-American Energy, which is west in the Quad City areas. And those are the participants in the Illinois Power Agency, those who fit under those categories. ComEd customers, Ameren customers, Mid-American customers do not decide where their power comes from. IPA has all of that control. IPA was a result of deregulation changes in Illinois from 1997 to 2007. Each year, the IPA develops an electricity procurement plan to procure electricity for all of their eligible customers in that area. These are typically short-term contracts, 3 years or less. And what happens is that they, from my understanding, they have a spring and a fall procurement each year, and every year they try to procure a third of their power, 33% of their power portfolio. And then the next year they do the same, and the next year they do the same, so that every 3 years they end up with a new portfolio. So if you bear with me just a little bit longer, I want to take a little deeper dive into IPA. Since there's been a lot of discussion about renewable and sustainable energy and also transparency. I invite you or anyone really to go to visit their website. I've got it right here, ipa.illinois.gov. I've spent a lot of time recently on this website, and I've used my contacts at IMEA to educate myself through their resources as well. And a couple things that I found. First, from a transparency perspective, there's a lot of information on this website. It's all there. I will say, just like most government websites, it's very difficult to find and cumbersome, but if you dig deep enough, you can find it. I won't read all of the bullet points here. This is really kind of outside the scope, but again, trying to give you some flavor of what ComEd customers, where their power comes from. But one thing that I'll mention that has been a topic of conversation is that it does appear that the IPA portfolio is between 7% and 11% renewable energy. I did find this really helpful. It's a real-time chart that shows the current generation fuel mix for IPA. This is actually a snapshot from this morning at 8 o'clock that I took from the website. So those folks in ComEd territory are receiving their power today from about 43% gas energy, 34% nuclear, 12% coal, 5% solar, and 2.5% wind, which is a total of 9.7% renewable energy. IMEA is at 11% today in comparison. So moving on to Category C, this is called a municipal utility, which is really an individual utility serving their own needs. This is also a non-profit entity similar to the Joint Action Agency. However, it's owned by a single municipal instead of multiple municipalities like IMEA. As I mentioned, I like to think of this category as do it all yourself. They own their own power generation or contract that directly, which is similar to how IMEA operates for St. Charles and the other 32 communities. And they have their own electric utility, just like St. Charles has its own electric utility. But they are responsible for transmission, distribution, maintenance of wires, similar to our organization. So Springfield, Illinois, City Water, Light and Power, CWLP, is the largest municipal utility in Illinois and the only municipality in Illinois who truly does it all themselves. It's a one-stop shop. They actually have their own generation in their city limits. So they own that. They distribute it from there to their source, and they have the utility behind that transmits all that to their customers. Don't know if that's quite an option for St. Charles at this point in time, but a hybrid of the CWLP model, which would probably be more likely in St. Charles instead of having our own physical power generation plants in our community, is for St. Charles to negotiate our own power purchase agreements directly with power generators. This is similar to what IMEA does for us now, and we would continue to have our own utility, but we would be responsible for that procurement of the power directly. Their focus is similar to a Joint Action Agency. They are looking for stability through affordable, reliable, and sustainable electric supply. They have complete control. There's unlimited influence over sourcing decision and market fluctuations in this category. There's a variety of options, really all options that are out there. It's a much broader range of energy sources. They can combine short-term and long-term power supply contracts. They have the opportunity for self-generation. However, all of that comes with a huge commitment and many new resources needed. My colleague in Winnetka just presented this information to his council last week, and he was estimating that Winnetka would have to add an additional 24 staff members to do this municipal utility category for Winnetka. I'm guessing that St. Charles would be larger than that. And this is one of the things that Naperville is studying right now. We've talked about the study that Naperville is doing, so we'll have that study available to us probably this fall. So with that background, there are really only 4 plausible alternatives for St. Charles to consider in lieu of maintaining the status quo and renewing our contract with IMEA. Number 1, join another Joint Action Agency. The Northern Illinois Municipal Power Agency, NIMPA, has 3 members, Batavia, Geneva, and Rochelle. It was established in 2004. They have peak loads of 230 megawatts combined. IMEA and its 32 members is about 1,000 megawatts in total. They do not have any full-time employees or no member services, and we'll get into the member services category here in a little bit. They actually get their management services through Avant Energy, which is located in Minnesota. They have one source of energy, and that is Prairie State Coal, is their only generation source. They own 7.6% of the generation plant, and they contract directly with the city. So, as mentioned before, this is the only other joint action agency I could find in Illinois, but I also want to make you aware that this isn't a foreign way to do business. There are over 2,000 towns and cities nationwide that are joint action agencies, and they all fall under this umbrella of the American Public Power Association, APPA. We are also members of APPA through IMEA and St. Charles. But these are really regional. Every state is different, every transmission organization is different, and so it's probably not too logical to find a joint action agency in Wisconsin or Indiana to join, because they're really specific to the laws and the organization of those particular states. And Bob, I see you looking at me. You can help me and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm learning this too for the first time.
I got it.
So, number two, what's another option? And that is to form a new joint action agency. But I will remind you that there's 42 joint action municipal electric utilities in Illinois. 32 of them belong to IMEA. So there's only 10 left, so to speak, that if we were going to form a new joint action agency with one of those 10, we may have trouble finding that partner, so to speak. There are economies of scale with the members, the 32 members that we have, and we've talked a lot about that. We haven't mentioned IMUA yet. Most of the other 10 joint action agencies that are not part of IMEA are part of IMUA, which is IMEA's sister company that does a lot of the advocacy at the state and federal level with us. They do a lot of the member resources and information for us as well. So those joint action agencies those other joint action agencies don't have the member resources, so they use IMUA to do that, and they pay for that resource. If we went this route, certainly additional resources would be needed for St. Charles, probably not as much as the previous concept. So the third alternative is this competitive procurement, sometimes also called retail electric suppliers, or RES. As mentioned, municipalities can conduct their own competitive bidding process to solicit proposals from various suppliers. There are a lot of times these suppliers are called trading companies, or in other words, they're kind of brokers in the market. This is very similar to the process that I just explained, how ComEd customers get their power through the Illinois Power Agency. St. Charles would do that directly. This is typically, again, short-term agreements, 3 years or less. They're not long-term agreements typically, which expose you to market volatility and price stability. We would certainly need more sources in St. Charles to do this type of competitive procurement, and probably in Bill's office in the finance department probably fits more in that category, purchasing things like this. And they don't have any member services like IMEA does typically, so that is something that we would do on our own or have to find. There's a bullet point below that's not too relevant, but I just wanted to make everybody aware of it, and that's called municipal electric aggregation, which is very similar to the competitive procurement process. South Elgin, Aurora, Carroll Stream does this, but the difference is they don't have their own electric utilities. They are in ComEd territory, but they have chosen as a community to go out and broker their own power needs through this thing called municipal electric aggregation, which is basically the same thing as number 3 that I just explained. We just can't do it because we have our own electric utility. That's the only difference. But there are some examples really close to us of folks who do this in the ComEd territory. And as mentioned, number 4, the power purchase agreements. Municipalities can enter into long-term agreements directly with energy generators, just like IMEA does for us now. So St. Charles, in essence, can enter into a long-term agreement with a solar plant or solar farm in this category, or a wind farm. St. Charles would have complete control over the energy portfolio and cost. There are many additional resources needed for St. Charles to do this. As I mentioned, this is really IMEA's organization for St. Charles only, so we need all the resources that IMEA provides to us today right here in St. Charles to do that. And the member services would also be the St. Charles responsibility. And just a few examples of member services here: state and federal compliance. There's a couple attorneys on the IMEA staff that help us deal with that. Legal requirements, transmission and substation transmission, power supply scheduling, 24/7 operations center that is in IMEA, energy audits, renewable energy expertise. All of that are under this category called member services, and something that we would have to supplement. Springfield does it. This is the example. They do it well. They're a big organization, but CWLP in Springfield has all of these resources in-house, and that's just the way they've developed their utility over the years. So it is a possibility. Okay, let me see where I'm at here. So this slide kind of wraps everything up into a summary. I like to see it all on one page so you can kind of get that sense. But so combining all of this together, it really boils down to this, that there are 4 possible alternative sourcing options in 3 separate categories in lieu of the IMEA for St. Charles. A, continue being part of a joint action agency. There's really 3 alternatives here. One is staying with IMEA, and the other 2 are joining another joint action agency or forming a new joint action agency, as we discussed. Well, both of these are potential options for St. Charles. I think it goes without saying. The staff would most likely not recommend joining NIMPA. That's the group that Geneva and Batavia are, for obvious reasons. They've got one resource, and that's Prairie State Coal at this point in time. That's probably not a feasible option for St. Charles. And forming a new joint action agency, I've got some reasons that probably doesn't make a lot of sense for St. Charles either. So a few things to consider in the joint action agency category: buying power and combined resources. With IMEA, there are 32 communities, 1,000 megawatts of power, compared to NIMPA with 3 communities and about 1/4 of that power. So the buying power and combined resources in IMEA is better than NIMPA. There are 42 total joint action agencies, communities in Illinois, which I mentioned. So again, it would be very difficult for St. Charles to go find another community that is not part of IMEA or NIMPA to partner with to create a new joint action agency. In regard to member services, which are things like the electric efficiency incentives, grid management, negotiation expertise, power supply scheduling, to name a few more, IMEA has it all. NIMPA does not. And so if St. Charles took this on for themselves, we would have to figure out where to get these member services or do it in-house. Power supply and power portfolio and renewable energy. IMEA has a diverse portfolio, is leading Illinois in renewable energy currently, and has a sustainability plan, which we reviewed last month. As far as I know, NIMPA does not. And we would have to create that sustainability if we formed our new joint action agency. And quite frankly, to be blunt, in my opinion and staff's opinion, IMEA is not broken. IMEA has a 40-year impressive history with very solid plan for the next 30 years. If for some reason that was a different situation, I think that joining a new joint action agency or forming a new joint action agency might rise to the top a little bit, or something we want to consider. But it just isn't for St. Charles and the other IMEA communities at this point in time. So category B, power marketer, serving retail customer choices. You can see that I've got an X on ComEd customer and the municipal electric aggregation like our friends in South Elgin. But Number three, competitive procurement is certainly an alternative for St. Charles. Here's some things to consider there. These are typically short-term agreements, which may increase risk to market volatility and price stabilization. These agreements are typically with a trading company or a broker, which are not for-profit organizations, which may impact prices, increases, and come in with higher risk for reliability. We're going to really need to know who these players are in that market. Local control, like we enjoy today from IMEA, would be diminished in this category. On a positive note, there may be a broader range of energy resources to tap into than IMEA currently have. However, we have less influence over sourcing those specific resources. Without the staffing and technology resources available from IMEA that we currently enjoy, St. Charles would need to add those resources in-house or find a way to contract them out. And without all of the member services available from IMEA currently, St. Charles would also have to supplement those in a new way under this category. So C, finally, there is one additional option for St. Charles, and that enters into this category called your own power purchase or individual utility serving its own needs, like Springfield does. Well, this opportunity certainly gives St. Charles the most flexibility and control that comes with a huge consideration for additional resources needs, including staff. And from a staff perspective, many of these staff in IMEA have a specific kind of non-traditional municipal background. These are experts in the field of electric energy, and St. Charles currently doesn't have that now for the most part. And most municipalities don't have that type of resource. So that's something that would have to be considered in this scenario. We certainly need some additional brick and mortar space, all sorts of technology advances, including a 24/7, 365-day operations center, to name a few. In essence, St. Charles would really just need to create its own IMEA agency under this umbrella of a city municipality. That's really what this would mean for us. It's a huge departure from how we operate today, but still is an option. And as mentioned, Springfield does it, and they do it really well. So I think you might know where this is all leading. While there are several plausible options for St. Charles to consider, none of them compare to the affordability, reliability, and sustainability from IMEA combined with the customer-focused reliability of our St. Charles electric utility. Therefore, even with the understanding that you haven't seen the actual contract yet, next month we're going to review that with you. There's still further discussion to be held, I know, and more information to share, but staff will be recommending accepting and approving a new power sales contract and capacity purchase agreement with IMEA for the period beginning October 1st, 2035 through May 31st, 2055. That being said, we want to make certain that our recommendation is not being made only because there may not be a better alternative at this time, but instead, and more importantly, in our opinion, our recommendation is being made because of what IMEA has become, partly because of the involvement St. Charles has had directly in IMEA over the past several decades in creating what the agency is today. St. Charles is IMEA. For the sake of time, I'll proceed fast through the following slides because you've seen them all before, but it's a reminder and a further review of what IMEA has done for St. Charles and our utility. IMEA is a nonprofit joint action agency owned by 32 municipalities who pool their resources and buying power to provide wholesale power supply from power generators through long-term stable contracts. You've seen this before. I won't read the words again. IMEA is an A-plus stable agency with $1.3 billion in assets that St. Charles helped to build. IMEA has 32 industry-specific employees. IMEA is a 24/7 operation, and most importantly, IMEA was formed and run by its members, including St. Charles. We have local control in IMEA. IMEA has a plethora of member services. We've talked about several of them that are not typically associated with other forms of energy providers that we had mentioned. So here's some of the member services that IMEA agency has. We reviewed this in our first presentation. Here's some more energy services that IMEA provides to St. Charles and its other municipalities. And 24/7 operation. Here are even some more member services that IMEA provides. IMEA is affordable and has had electric rates remain flat over the previous 10 years and are projected to remain flat thanks to the energy-owned resources and long-term contracts. And IMEA has a sustainability plan, including compliance with CEJA to have 45% reduction of CO2 emissions by 2038 and net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And that is it, but a few housekeeping notes for you. As expected in April, the IMEA Board of Directors considered and approved 10 separate resolutions accepting new IMEA power sales contracts, and I mentioned the 10 cities that have signed up already, if you'd like to use that word. It is my understanding that IMEA has received an additional 6 contracts to date and anticipate another 4 before the next IMEA board meeting, which is scheduled for June 27th. So after the June 27th board meeting is expected that we have a total count of 20 total contracts out of the 32 overall communities that have renegotiated or re-signed up with IMEA, for lack of better words there. From a scheduling perspective, you can see the check marks. We had an introduction on April 1st. On April 22nd, we reviewed the IMEA sustainability. We're at today's date, May 28th, with the other alternatives for St. Charles. I do still have planned, if so desired, the IMEA organization, representatives from IMEA coming to the June 24th Government Services contract. The focus of that is to review the power sales contract and receive a verbal offer from the IMEA organization itself, but we will certainly review some of the things we've already reviewed together through IMEA's eyes, and any questions you have for them, please come prepared for that meeting and ask away. We will have all the resources there to answer the questions. And then beyond that, you know, I'm really going to need your help after June 24th to help our staff, help me to figure out where we go next and get you more information if needed, review something in a different way, whatever you desire. So after June 24th, we'll be looking for that feedback from you. And with that, any questions?
Do you want to start? You can.
We'll start then. Okay. Thank you for your presentation. One of your early slides stated how much of our power is from strictly coal. I forgot what that percent was, because you broke down nuclear, wind, solar. What is our percent of coal that we use for our electricity?
Currently, it is about 80%.
80% coal is what we use.
Yes.
But I thought your number said like you had nuclear in there, and you had...
We have no nuclear. We may have a contract with a nuclear, but it's very small. We have about 11% renewable energy, wind, solar,
Okay, and that's, so 80% of our power is coal. Well, obviously, speaking for myself, okay, we need somehow to eliminate or drastically reduce the amount of coal, but I don't want to do it over a 30-year period. And, I mean, this contract, I mean, you make very valid points here about reliable electricity, but the other issue is the coal. I mean, that's, to me, that's the big thing right now. How do we eliminate or drastically reduce our dependency on coal?
But I guess the general answer I'll give you is I'll redo the sustainability presentation that we did just last month.
I understand.
That's our plan, and that reduces coal significantly by 2035 to 7, and 100% by 2050 to 55.
But isn't that plan dependent on us finding solutions that we don't have yet, correct?
Absolutely, and that is the main reason to enter into this agreement early, is so that we know specifically which communities are on board after 2035, so that we can go get those resources. We can buy more wind, we can buy more solar, we can look into battery storage, which is on the docket for next year. So that's exactly what IMEA plans to do, is replace that coal energy with sustainable, renewable energy. That is what the sustainability plan is all about.
Okay. Thank you.
With the other option that you talked about tonight, is their sustainability plan similar, or is there something lacking where you don't have the confidence that you do in IMEA?
So I think, are you talking about maybe the ComEd territory?
No,
IPA?
the NIMPA one.
The NIMPA one, as far as I know, I don't see any sustainability plan from that organization. So if they've considered it, I may have missed it, or I can certainly do some more research for you. Again, most of their agency administrative is from that group out of Minnesota, so maybe they have considered it, but I didn't see anything on their website that talks about a sustainability plan.
That is comparable to what you've seen on IMEA.
IMEA has a sustainability plan, yep.
That you are very comfortable with.
It is, as we mentioned several times last month, it is a plan meant to be reviewed annually and updated quite frequently. So I feel as comfortable as that plan as you would a strategic plan for our city or municipality. We have control of going faster or slower, ramping it up, ramping it down, seeing what advances in technology bring, and adjust accordingly.
You mentioned these are the best two options in Illinois, but you said that there might be some, say, in Wisconsin. What are reservations into looking at some of those?
We could. I think that from what I understand, a joint action agency in Wisconsin is going to know the laws of Wisconsin. They're going to have the same type of resources that go to their state legislators. They're going to know the laws. They don't have CEJA, for example, in Wisconsin. So their agencies are built around the area and the regions that they supply. So it's just apples and oranges. That's not to say that there might be a large joint action agency in Wisconsin and they want an Illinois town to join them, and they'll figure those resources out. So that certainly is a possibility.
Thank you.
So thank you for this. This was helpful in understanding what types of opportunities there are, and I do understand that NIMPA is 100% coal, so that would be counter to what we're attempting to do. I have some questions specifically about the article. I think all of us got this in our mailboxes, and I know that I was sent this by a bunch of residents. And I think my first and foremost question is, it seems like other municipalities responded to the reporter, and I'm curious, and I'm assuming Heather's going to answer this, why we did not respond to some of these questions.
There was not a lack of response. What we told the reporter when he reached out to us was that there were ongoing discussions happening with the city council. We told him the plan that we had to address this, and we weren't prepared at a staff level to respond for what the council's direction was yet, but they were actively discussing it and sent him to the link of the future discussions on our website. So it wasn't a declining to answer. It was just that these are big discussions that we're engaging with the city council on, and it's important to have these full comprehensive discussions before we responded to some of the things that he was asking us.
Okay, that's super different than what it says in the paper. It says that there was no response. So
in addition to that, I might add that they contacted Naperville and Winnetka first about a week before they made contact with us, which was really late in getting a response before they published that article.
Yeah.
So,
and I wanted to ask that in a public forum so that our residents can understand that this isn't St.Charles choosing to not be transparent.
Not at all, and Lisa's very engaged with all the reporters. We do have people regularly contact us about this, and we had that discussion, which it's really important from our perspective at a staff level. We've got, 10 people up at the dais right now, and we are having a number of planned workshops on this, so we just wanted to make sure that we were not responding preemptively before we were able to fully vet and answer a lot of those questions, which were not simply distilled down to some of the answers that they were looking for.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. And then, in the article, there are a couple of things I really do want to ask you directly about, because I think that people are going to ask us these questions and why we're not addressing them, and I know that you're equipped to answer them because you've answered some of them to some degree in the sustainability plan and other things, so I hope that you don't mind that I'm asking them in this forum here. But one of them is that in the article it asserts that, quote, scores of other utilities are preparing to quickly shift away from fossil fuel, and that IMEA could continue to rely on Prairie State coal until 2050. Can you help clarify what that really actually means, and who is quickly shifting? What actually does that mean?
So again, those are really tough questions to answer, because it's answering for those other agencies, or what was the word that they used? Other agencies?
Yeah, they said scores of other utilities.
So, I mean, first off, my first question back would be, what are the scores of other utilities? I need to know that. I need to get an answer from them to compare what they're doing differently than St. Charles. But, we did a couple little case studies. We showed you what the IPA organization that ComEd customers are doing. They actually have, and again, please go to that website. They have procured, from what I gather, for the next 3 years, and you can see their portfolio. It is increasing in renewables in the next 3 years, but so is IMEA. So we're all going to get better together. To answer a question like who's going faster or who not, I really need more detail. There's no way we can answer that unless we understand the other side of the coin.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. It also mentions that we would miss an opportunity to reduce energy costs in an era when prices for renewable energy are steadily declining. I'm not sure how they're making that assertion, not understanding where our energy mix comes from. And again, this obviously is written without our input or without a whole lot of detail directly from us, but I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I think the only thing I might say there, and again, we can get more detailed as time goes on, and I'll reserve an opportunity to answer these in more specific, but I think go right back to that sustainability plan, and I would just offer that the Illinois Municipal Electric Agency is doing the same thing. They are going to search for those new renewable energies. We've already done it. We've been doing it for a decade. We're actively searching for battery storage capabilities in the next year. So these are things that we are doing as an agency to replace our coal portfolio.
Okay. It also mentions that the cost to operate Prairie State break even with what it would take to replace the plant's output with new wind farms, and that's according to a nonprofit think tank called Energy Innovation. So I want to understand from the timeline, and I'm picturing that snake timeline that you had for the sustainability plan. Where is the wind power or the wind farm power in that mix, and how does that play in?
I think that we're going to have the wrong button. I can maybe find it. There it is.
Yeah.
So again, it's a plan that can be adjusted, but this is our plan. So the one analogy I like to use in regards to Prairie State is that I think this was part of your question, is that if you think about it as a home and a mortgage, in essence, our mortgage on the Prairie State coal plant is up in 2035. So we own the building, we own the home at that point in time. So at that point in time, we can do a lot and that will be a decision that IMEA makes and a decision that we all make together and the 32 communities that are IMEA. So, you know, getting to 2035 gets you to a percentage of 45% reduction in that last line of CO2 emissions at Prairie State. So by 2035 to 2038, we need to find renewable sources to replace that 45% during that timeline. And you can see a couple things that we have targeted. For example, the battery storage study in 2025, adding another 130 megawatts of solar in 25 and 26, adding the battery storage in 2030, replacing the existing wind contract in 2030 also. The wind contract is in Ledecal was 70 megawatts, replacing expiring wind contracts at Green River in 2035. So those are literally replacing renewable energy sources to get ready for that 45% reduction in 2035 at Prairie State.
And all of those things contribute to that net zero.
That's right.
Goal. It is not solely one thing, which is one of my other questions in here, which is the assertion that that IMEA's pitch hinges on a net zero carbon removal technology, and that's entirely carbon capture. So it seems like that's the assertion very much in this article, and I don't know if you want to speak to some of that.
Yeah, the only thing
I don't get the impression from what you presented to us that is their entire goal, is go to carbon capture, because I see many other types of renewables in here, and I see that as one thing that they already have started, and it's not even on the rest of that slide. Yeah,
and I think I mentioned this last month, if not the month before, but at this point in time, IMEA has no interest, and Prairie State Coal also has no interest in funding carbon capture directly. Okay. That is not anything we have talked about in IMEA, and I'm certain that Prairie State is the same. Now, there are studies out there about carbon capture. University of Illinois has a grant to look at the technology. So the way I might say this is that IMEA is not against the research and exploring new technology, just like we're not against the research for battery storage or any other opportunities for renewable energy. So we haven't taken a hard line and said no to carbon capture, but we also haven't taken the commitment that we are in any way interested in funding that or being a part of that type of technology for our resource.
That is really helpful to understand, because I think that's a big question that we are getting and seeing, not just in this article, but just from many organizations that are asking us about just carbon removal. Because, you know, one of the things is there's a new federal regulation for eliminating 90% of CO2 emissions by 2032, and how IMEA and Prairie State are going to manage doing that. And I guess one of my questions would be is, as an IMEA member, is the City of St. Charles responsible if projects like that go over budget? Because one of the other things that's mentioned in here is when Prairie State was constructed, the company Peabody shifted the construction costs, the overages, to IMEA. So in a way, we did pay for those overages, and I guess that's a concern, is if we're funding new sources of energy exploration, is that something that we're going to pay for as consumers or as a municipality? Are we on the hook for that?
Yeah, I think I'll just answer the same way, is that at this point in time, IMEA is not interested in funding that. So in my opinion, that wouldn't be something we would be responsible for financially.
All right. And then, so, you know, there's also a question here, is why Prairie State is needed as the reliable source of electricity. And I think you answered that in this last question, or in this last presentation, because we don't have any other single source to be our delivery system for all of these different types of power.
Yeah, I think, I might, again, be real kind of blunt on this answer as well. If renewable energy was reliable and affordable and available today, IMEA would flip the switch. This is where you can get into reading articles, that the country is reading about and the world is reading about. When is renewable energy going to be ready, and when can we actually get on board and make it part of our organization and our community? We're not ready yet to turn our entire portfolio and turn off the coal at this point in time and go completely renewable energy. It's not available. It took us 18 months to get the solar panels on top of our little First Street project. Not because they weren't available, but because they weren't available. So these are things that are reality in regards to renewable energy. I hope, just like the rest of us, that this path speeds up, that reliability of these parts and pieces get faster, that they become more affordable, much quicker than 2050. And if that's the case, then there's no way IMEA and their agents would look elsewhere. So I think that's going to have to just be a little bit of a wait and see game for everybody to see how fast this is going to go.
Yeah, I'll just end this with a statement that I do think that there is a misconception that it is very easy to deliver all of those renewables, and it is clear from what you presented to us that it isn't as simple as it sounds. So I do appreciate you answering all of those, because I think it's helpful for us to be able to go back to people who are asking those types of questions to us. So thank you for taking those on the fly, because I didn't ask you any of those ahead.
And if I didn't answer them
you did.
Specifically, or you want more information, I can take another stab at it. We can all take another stab at it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Can you go to the slide that has the bar graph with the blue and the red, the ComEd and the rates?
That one?
No, go ahead.
No,
Just have a question on that.
It's going to help me get there. Go ahead.
It's going to help you get there. Peter, excellent job. I know there's a lot of information out there, whether it's correct, based on the press or other places that are doing this. I'm a huge fan of reducing fossil fuel. But much like electrical vehicles, it's going to take us a while to get there. The technology, pardon me, to support just our city's electrical needs on an annual basis, to get rid of coal as quickly as we can, that renewable energy, wind, solar, or other forms that haven't even been discovered yet, have to be reliable. Because our people, our residents count on the lights going on when they want the lights on. And I think as a city, that's our responsibility to make sure we do it to the best of our ability, but yet also keep the cost per unit, per kilowatt hour, reasonable too. Nobody wants to be used to paying 8 cents a kilowatt hour now. We change and get rid of coal, and all of a sudden now it's 25 cents per kilowatt hour. That's a huge chunk. And we will get better, as you said, as IMEA and other municipalities say, this is what we're pushing for, because that's what our residents want to hear. So there's a lot of information out there. Some of the alternatives, I just know from past experience, they're very costly, trying to bring in-house, basically an energy acquisition organization, which would be a huge cost to the city to be able to replicate that. So I'll limit my questions for the rest of my colleagues to do that, but great job and lots of information. I know there's more to come, so I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Just a couple things. Refresh my memory, Peter. So Naperville is studying option C. Is that what you said there? The market option, is that right?
That, from my understanding, that's kind of the one of their parts of the study is to see if they could go at it alone. Now, that probably comes in a couple different forms, like we reviewed. Do they want to do more of a procurement model, or do they want to take it all on and even, own their own energy sources? I think they're going to scratch the surface on both of those questions. Okay. That's what I understand they're their consultant is doing. And actually, that's a good reminder that we actually met with the Naperville's staff, their mayor and city administrator, with our mayor and city administrator, and Winnebago's mayor and city administrator just this morning, and we're going to keep that dialogue open with them just to learn how they're doing on those types of studies and what they're also doing to help prepare their council to make this decision. So it's a shared resource, so to speak. And an update on the Naperville study is that they actually are getting those approved, the consultants approved for 2 separate studies that are pretty similar in June. I think it's June 2nd was their board meeting. So they haven't even started that consultant process yet. They do hope that the consultant can get data and information prepared in 60 to 90 days. So they're probably looking at releasing that information early fall, October, I would guess would be a good pinpoint at this point in time. But that continues to push from what I've told you before in the past. These things take time, and I think Naperville's seeing that that's the case with their consultant.
So it sounds like I know you're not speaking on behalf of, but in your communication with, which first of all, that was another question I was going to ask, and I thank you for answering that. There is robust, it sounds like, or beginning of communication between the three, because we're the 3 largest, right? Naperville, Winnetka, and St. Charles. So I don't know if Heather, again, you said it, but I mean, you are planning to talk to them more, and we're going to continue this, correct?
Yeah, it's specific to this, but I'll let you know that, quite frankly, I have direct communication with all of the board members at IMEA quite regularly, and so does our staff, all 31 other communities. So we're a team, and we share resources and ideas and concepts and things like that. So we have that relationship.
That's good. So you mentioned also the timeline. So next government services committee meeting, we're going to have representatives from IMEA.
Yes.
So it sounds like we'll talk about the contract, and we do have a copy, which I haven't taken a deep dive yet, but so I appreciate that. Are they also prepared to also discuss their plan, this sustainability plan, or are we just keeping that discussion to the contract?
I think that you'll see some repeat information. You'll see their sustainability plan. You'll see what IMEA is, but in their words, in their context, and it'll be a great opportunity also for you to ask them to keep me honest and make sure that I said everything right. But the focus is going to be that contract. You haven't seen that yet, and I think according to my notes, that's kind of the last piece that is an hour-long conversation with you, unless you help me and ask for additional information after that meeting. So,
okay. And I'll just say, you mentioned in that timeline too that you would want some direction after July, and from my point of view, I think understanding and having conversations with Naperville and our peer communities is going to be valuable. I mean, again, I know we didn't pay for that consultant, and they are, but the findings would be valuable to me. I can't speak for all my colleagues here too, but we can have this conversation in July, of course, but I would recommend that we take your information, talk to IMEA folks, and then wait and see what Naperville determines with their consultant. I just want to hear what they have to say. So that's all I have to say on that. So, thank you. And thanks for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Peter. I'm not sure really where to start. A lot of information to absorb. So I got the the contract, and I was kind of poking through it. And you mentioned, if you can go back to the sustainability plan, I'd like to take a look at that.
This chart here?
Yeah, that one there, thank you. So you mentioned that the IMEA has no interest in funding carbon capture directly. And I guess my question is that in the contract? Are they committed to doing that in the contract?
No.
Okay.
That's an IMEA board decision.
And that's one of my big concerns, is because I've just been doing my own research, and there's there's a little snippet here in the Tribune about, and maybe you can speak to it, the owners of a Texas coal plant equipped one of their 4 coal-burning generators with the largest carbon capture project attempted to date in the United States. It only prevented 55% of the unit's CO2 emissions from escaping into the atmosphere, required so much energy the owners had to build a separate power plant. And then another article came out today in the, I believe it was the Chronicle or Shaw Local, and I think my colleague Jamie mentioned a few points. There's additional regulation in the core of that bill that they're trying to pass because they have some concerns about the risks of carbon capture. So would they consider putting that into the contract, that they are committed to not doing carbon capture? Because for me, it's a financial risk as well, because we have ownership, right, in the IMEA, and if something doesn't go right, we're on the hook for it. And that has to be paid for somehow, and usually it's typically through a rate increase. I mean, typically to pay for stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit, some of the things that I'm mentioning and why it's not in the contract.
Yeah, I think, again, we'll talk a lot more about the contract next month, but, and I think I gave you some footnotes on that just to kind of get prepared, but in essence, the new contract is what I would consider, and this is probably not a legal term, somebody can add a better word in there, but I consider it a relationships contract. The contract is not a commodities contract. Like, we do so much in public works. AJ comes up here and he says we need to buy a truck for $120,000 and there's a money exchange. This is not that type of contract. This is a contract that defines the relationship between the 32 communities and what this organization called IMEA is. Kind of defines those rules. So that's why the contract's not extensive. I mean, I can't remember if it's 20 or 30 pages, but it's not this massive contract that defines all of the purchases that the organization is going to procure in the next 35 years. And it doesn't hold your feet to the fire for things like, the Department of Energy study or anything like that. IMEA has always managed those decisions as they come up with their board with a vote that as long as I've been involved, has been pretty unanimous across the board. So these are things that we discuss just like you do as the city council as they come up and make decisions about these type of things as they come up. They're never in a binding contract, so to speak. So I'll take a stab at, I think it's a great question to ask IMEA's membership next week. I think they'll probably say no, because number one, by that time they'll probably have 20 communities that they already have a signed agreement with, and I think they'll tell you a lot of what I just told you, that this is not the type of contract that allows for that type of language that is rigid on a decision about our power purchases, the studies that we're going to engage in, the consultants that we hire, and things like that.
Okay, so because in the contract there's another area that says cost, causer, and cost causation. So it says, it shall mean the participating member that causes the agency to incur an extraordinary expense or investment. So let's say there's 20 members that say, you know what, I want to invest in carbon capture, and it's $1 billion. And we say, you know what, we're not interested. We don't want to be on the hook for that. That's not the direction we want to go. So what happens if it fails and we have ownership in the IMEA? Are we on the hook even though we didn't want to participate in it? You know what I'm saying? I understand the relationship, but the relationship can be costly if decisions are not, you know what I'm saying? That's the part I'm lost on.
Yeah, that's kind of a new word too, and another great question for them next month, and I can dig into it before then, but that is a little bit of a new term for IMEA's contract because of, I'm losing the term, where a community can, in essence, procure 10% more energy in the new contract. Do you remember the name of that? I don't have it.
That's member-directed resources.
Member-directed resources.
That's my next question when you're done.
Thank you. So in the new contract, and this is new to IMEA, the idea is that if St. Charles wanted to go faster, so to speak, than all the other communities, and we want to buy renewable energy ourselves, we can do so up to 10% of our total load and make those decisions for St. Charles only. The cost causer language in the contract was born out of that by saying, well, you can make that decision, but St. Charles will also pay for it completely. All the resources, even down to the legal hourly rate that is used for the contracts. So St. Charles can make that decision, Naperville can make that decision on their own, but they're also not causing any more costs for those other members because of that decision.
Right, so that's where I'm going with something that's a sizable investment like carbon capture. These are not solar panels. It's enormous, the investment on it, the cleanup, you know, things of that nature. So when you do this member-directed resource, and let's say there's a group of individuals that want to do that, you know, does this apply to them? Maybe that's a question for the IMEA board to answer. Would this apply to them, and we're out of that? So, because that's concerning to me. And then it says a lot of these things in the member-directed resources is contingent upon the IMEA board's approval and not necessarily our approval, you know, up here. So I just feel like there should be, and maybe that's a local thing with us, is that we should have more, and I think we talked about it last time, input on what we're doing within this contract. But, and the other thing that's interesting in the member-directed resource is it says that participating members would not be subject to state statute or qualify for a program due to the status as municipalities. It says clean coal-powered facilities as defined in the Illinois Power Agency Act shall not be allowed as member-directed resources unless specifically approved by the Board of Directors by the IMEA. What does that mean?
I think it says just that. This is a program that was meant to increase our total renewable energy, and so I think they simply say that coal is not going to be. If for some reason a community wanted to buy more coal in this particular clause, that would not be supported by IMEA.
Yeah, because it's just weird because it says unless it's specifically approved by the Board of Directors. Maybe that's a question I need to ask them, because for clarity on that. And then as far as the options that that have been presented to us tonight, it seems like for us to really have any sort of independence to go outside on our own, we almost have to not have our own electric utility staffing, I suppose, right? I mean, that's what it sounds like from looking at the municipal electric aggregate, Carroll Stream's in it, and a few other towns. I think South Elgin.
So not exactly. So going back to this, you know, I think that the one that probably makes the most sense that we can do, having our own electric utility, is this competitive procurement, number 3. So if we didn't have IMEA procures power for us right now. That's the agency that does that. If in 2036 we don't have IMEA, then and we haven't made a decision to do anything else, then it is number 3 or number 4 right there. Number 3, in essence, is that we go out and we secure short-term contracts with these retail electric suppliers, so these brokers in essence, and we do that for St. Charles, but we can still have our own electricity.
Okay, we could still keep our own electric utility.
So we are asking them to provide power for the next 3 years with these resources to get it to our front door. And then the St. Charles Electric Utility would take it from there. Number 4 is not working directly with a broker, so to speak, but it's going directly to the source, going right to the solar plant, and going right to the wind farm and negotiating those contracts directly with them. That is really what IMEA does for us right now, is they get into long-term contracts with the suppliers of energy. And St. Charles can do that also. But as mentioned, that comes with a whole lot of everything.
Right. I think number 4 doesn't seem practical from what you were presenting. But number 3, I'm just curious, has anyone reached out to ComEd or whatever to see what their level of interest is? I'm just curious, how does that process work? I mean, do we get a consultant? What is that? Is that something that Naperville is doing? I mean...
No, so again, I think I mentioned this a couple of times. I feel like that's beyond the scope of anything that you have all asked for staff to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, if you want to consider that, you can let us know. I'll probably say, well, that's going to take a couple of years and some pretty specialty consultants and probably some attorneys to really dig into that question. But that is also suggesting that if we want to go ComEd's route, then we don't have our own utility in St. Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Because ComEd customers don't have their own utility. ComEd, the company, is their utility.
Mm-hmm.
It replaces St. Charles Electric Utility.
And then my
case.
Okay. And then my last question is last month I asked about putting something in the contract where it has like an incremental increase every year or so to get to where we need to be with CEJA, or required anyways. Mm-hmm. Are they still opposed to that, do you think? They wouldn't want to put that in there to, it's like a stronger commitment to the renewables. Is that something you don't see happening, or?
Again, ask them the question. I think that my gut tells me, and again, as I certainly take your advice on this, being the member of IMEA, but I think that traps you, and this goes both ways, right? And so if you put these specific targets in a contract for some reason, then who's to say we can't go faster than the sustainability plan? And then what does that look like? You in essence have to come back to 32 communities to change 32 contracts with those communities to adjust that. And that's very similar to a sustainability, or to a strategic plan for a municipality. The reason that those typically aren't codified in a code, so that you don't have to go back and actually change that code.
Is there economies of scale with the member-directed resources? In other words, could there be multiple out of all the members? Let's say 4 of them want to go a little bit faster. Would the cost come down if you get more into that type of whatever it is that they're choosing to go into? Is that a question to ask?
I think that's a good question. Okay. I think that certainly probably would fit under that umbrella. That if 4 communities, for example, want to go faster, then they want to procure the same type of power. Mm-hmm. Again, that's the benefit right now that we've enjoyed through IMEA is power in numbers. So absolutely, I think that's certainly efficient and cost less and all of the above.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, I just have one. Sorry, I want one clarification. Sorry. So Peter, so you have the slide up. Thank you. So hypothetically, say again, this is a hypothetical. Like, we would say that we went to Constellation, their generator, right? It used to be part of ComEd and Exelon and all that stuff, but that would fall under 3 or 4. So what I'm here, I was confused. I thought that meant there's like 3.
Yeah, Constellation, and from what I know about Constellation, would be more 3. They're kind of, right, they have a lot of different power sources.
To go to them, yeah.
Right, and that might be a little bit of a mix between 3 and 4.
That's why I was confused, because they're mostly, in fact, or either mostly or 100% nuclear, I thought. So, I don't know. That would be something you said, what you were saying, if we explored that, it would take years and consultants, lawyers, or, I mean, I don't know if you know the answer to that question, but I mean, they're here in Illinois. I mean, could that possibly be an option? I'm just, if we go to...
It's an option. It's on the slide.
Got it. Okay. So a hybrid maybe of 3 and 4. That makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. This is an eye-opening presentation, so I appreciate that. And a lot of my colleagues already touched on a few things, so I'll try to be brief. But I guess the first question I had goes back to a statement you made, whether it was, and this is Springfield, Illinois we're talking about, correct?
Yes.
And was that the municipality that was only utilizing 12% coal? Was that the one you had mentioned?
I don't know, no, it was not. I don't know what their portfolio is. I don't know what their generating sources are. I didn't study that, but it is all within their community. They have a power plant there. I don't know, maybe somebody in my team knows, but I can look that up pretty
Well, I thought
easily.
you said there was an option or that was utilizing 12% coal as well as wind and nuclear and all that.
I think maybe the IPA
It could be.
arrangement that the ComEd folks are under, today's portfolio is, I think it was 12%, if
Right,
not
right,
24, I can't remember. I have it right here.
And is that like a realistic expectation for us to even get close to in the next 20 or 30 years? And touching on some of the other council members' comments, going back to Brian as well, are we going to be, what's going to happen to St. Charles in 30 years if we're signed up for a contract? Are we going to get indirectly punished? Are we going to get, share the wealth on fines if IME's not doing what they're supposed to do with CEJA or Prairie State, et cetera? Is that going to come back to hit us at some point?
That's a new question. Let me think about that. And again, maybe one for the folks at IMEA next month.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
a good question.
I'm just trying to find out what
I don't know that if you didn't match what CEJA requirements were, how that would affect you. That's a good question.
Yeah, because I'm more concerned with, and I'm not saying I don't care about the environment or anything, but right now I know, and I said this the last time, we have a very reliable electrical grid. It's been better and better over the years, and it's to some degree cost effective. And I'm just trying to see if we go another route, how much less cost effective it's going to be. Maybe it will still be reliable, but if it's going to be a much more higher cost for our residents and their electricity, I guess.
Good question. Just a reminder, though, the CEJA is statewide. That's not just that's not just IMEA. That's all electric providers in Illinois. So we're all held to that standard. So I think that if the technology is there and we can procure that technology and match those goals with CEJA, we'll be able to do it just like any other utility provider. So I think that we would all be in that boat together if it came down to that, so to speak.
Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
Hi, Peter.
Hello.
I think everyone's pretty much touched on a lot of things that, we all wanted to get feedback on, but I had some other random questions. If we were to hypothetically explore the JAA or the NIMPA, you mentioned that the house is paid for, right? Is it $1.3 billion in assets?
We currently have $1.3 billion in assets.
So we own like 17%, right? Is that the number?
That's a total of all assets that we own. So
hypothetically, if we were to sell, let's say we went a different route and we're not a part of IMEA anymore and we were to sell it, do they write us a check for $220 million?
No.
No. Although we own 17% of, we don't actually own any of the assets, like for real, in dollars?
IMEA owns it. Yep.
Okay.
Now I'm sure that some attorneys can maybe fight that, but as far as
so we
I
don't
know
actually own a house. We just we just have some ownership in it, but it's not actually ours.
Maybe I should answer it by that's definitely a legal question. But,
okay.
But I think the stance that IMEA will take is that no. I mean, if an organization leaves in 2035 and doesn't renew, and they want IMEA to write them a check, it's going to be a no from IMEA.
You're positive on that, though?
I've asked the question.
Oh, you have asked the question?
That would be their stance right now.
Okay.
Yep.
No, I just wanted to see how that whole thing works. Listen, at the end of the day, currently we're at 11% renewable energy. No doubt it's going to increase. With what I've seen so far, I mean, they still are, in my opinion, the best option for the residents, the way I see it right now. Obviously, we're still seeing and listening to more stuff, but reliability, affordability are, I rank reliability as number one. I mean, when I expect electricity to work when I, flip a switch. So thank you for the presentation. I'm looking forward to hearing more, and that's all.
Can you go back to the bar, Brad? So Steve just touched on this. I want to make sure as we wrap this up, and I'll be real quick. So right now, 11% of IMEA's portfolio is renewable. What is the projection, if St. Charles and Naperville do not continue with IMEA, what is the forecast rate? What are the impact of these two municipalities not being a part of this program, of this action group? What is the impact of the portfolio being, 15%, 20%? My assumption is it's going to slow down dramatically because of the size and the contribution that our users make in order for them to make the future purchase agreements necessary to stay on that trajectory. And I know that was a giant word salad, so.
I think the answer to that is no.
There's no, right.
So, these are decisions made by every municipality that's part of IMEA. Well, IMEA, after 2035, doesn't have St. Charles and Naperville, and they're out. The organization won't have to won't be required to purchase as much energy, but the portfolio of that energy will stay the same, no matter if St. Charles or Naperville are in it. And those will be decisions that IMEA board members make. And after 2035, if St. Charles and Naperville aren't there, we won't be board members, we won't be making those decisions.
Okay. So the St. Charles and Naperville decision won't necessarily impact how quickly, whether technology becomes available or just general availability of renewable energy becomes more available because of the amount of power necessarily that IMEA will be purchasing. If we're not a part of it, they can still stay on that trajectory to be growing their percentage to say, hey, we're at 11%, now we're at 22, because maybe we don't need as much power because these municipalities aren't a part of it.
We can go faster, right, up to a certain percentage, 10% of our total load. If you see the contract too, it can even extend beyond that, again, with board approval. So,
yeah. So Brian and I and Steve have had a lot of conversations. Jamie and I have talked, and I think as you're starting to see this committee, certain lanes that people are wanting to spend more time on. The economics part of it, it's an organization that doesn't exist without us, but it has $1.3 billion in assets that is driven by the blue part of the chart, right? And you look at the cost projected for the next 4 years, while the power supply is staying relatively flat, the overall cost is increasing to the user because of transmission. Is there a way to be able to offset that in blue to say, hey, the 1.3 billion, we're going to slow the rate of that growth because realistically, maybe the technology or the supply isn't there to necessarily to go make that, some of those questions around, I get now more in the last 2 months of our conversations about this is more of a working agreement between these municipalities and less of, say, a traditional formal financial contract. But I think where some of us are starting to, as we're having conversations with constituents and colleagues around the economics and that impact and what that looks like, while still addressing some of the conversations about, we all want renewable, clean, safe energy, but just trying to get clear as crystal understanding about the economics and the impact, for the community moving forward.
Ask those questions of IMEA, they'll answer it. The one thing that I'll offer to you just to keep, it's hard to continue to remember this, but St. Charles and Naperville are in this contract till 2035. That is the existing contract. So all of these projections out 10 more years from now, 11 more years from now, we're in that game. The next 10 years, the organization is going to be making decisions about the portfolio and the energy sources for the next 20 years. So if Naperville and St. Charles aren't signed up with IMEA and aren't committed to IMEA, then those decisions would be made without St. Charles and Naperville. So I think the one statement that from a cost perspective, and certainly I've shared this in several slides, is that part of the benefit of the agency in 32 municipalities is the amount of power that we have. So certainly if Naperville and St. Charles and Winnetka, for example, are not part of IMEA in the future, their buying power is going to be less than it currently is. There's no doubt about that. So are they going to be able to get the exact same deals, the exact same contracts that we would if Naperville, St. Charles? I think that's probably a fair statement. That's just economics, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the questions you're asking in that. But again, that won't be our concern if we're out of IMEA in 2035.
Yeah.
I have two quick ones, I promise. Quick. One would be, we keep mentioning Naperville and Winnetka along with us, and I'm curious as an option to talk with them about creating a joint action agency with those two municipalities, and us, like, you know, I know that that's how there's three municipalities in NIMPA, from what I understand. They're three fairly large municipalities, an option. I'm just curious if that's something that we can explore with them or talk to them about as we talk through these different things, because that would be buying power for us. I know that does come with staff cost and all of the things that were addressed in there.
That is an option.
And then, you know, the other would be, where's my other question in here? To Alderperson Weber's question about the $1.3 billion in assets, I would assume that includes the Prairie State coal plant, which will be at some point a defunct, non-existent asset. So it almost isn't an asset to some degree.
But that will be replaced with other assets.
Mm-hmm. Well, right.
As that lot goes offline, then we will own part of a wind farm or part of a solar farm or part of a battery storage facility.
But today, it's a depreciating asset because we know that it will go offline. It will cease to be allowed to exist under current legislation, right? That's right. I mean, eventually, Prairie State will be gone. Right. But those resources will be replaced with other ones. Yeah, and that's good. I just wanted to make that understand that this is not like a thing we can just get. We can't sell it to somebody because they can't use it. It's not usable as a coal plant because you won't be able to utilize coal power after a certain date under the current legislation. Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know, these are reasonable people that are part of these decision makings, just like you are. In regard to spending a ton of money on a new technology for a coal plant at this point in time, I don't know, as a member of IMEA, I would really have a hard time saying yes to even supporting that, right? No, that's not what I mean. You're right. You're not going to put a lot of energy and resources into, so to speak, a dying plant. And I think that's just not going to happen with an organization. IMEA's leadership won't even recommend that to the board members. So I was going in the opposite direction of that. Is selling off to make money for the organization. Like, I don't know how you would sell something that can't be used. So in a way, it doesn't feel like an asset to me. Like if I have a car that doesn't run, I can't very well sell that off, and I can sell it for parts, I suppose. That's different than a building that can't be used. So that was my point. Not that we would be investing in additional coal. It was just that it's an unusable asset. So that was all.
Quick question. To Jamie's point, the coal plant's eventually going to go away, right? Could you find out through IMEA what are their obligation for cleaning it up? Cleaning up through CEJA, are there requirements for them to clean that up, and what are those costs, and how will those costs be paid for? So that's my question. Maybe if you know it, or if you want to ask them, I'm just curious on the details of that. Yeah, I think that is a great question for them. We have discussed that. I think the general answer to that is yes. I think everybody that owns that facility is going to be responsible for what we call decommissioning of that plant. And IMEA and all the other members of Prairie State are already starting to plan for that. I don't have the numbers in my head,
but there will be some costs. But if you do that, for example, over time, in the next 10 years, to set up a fund to start thinking about decommissioning costs in 2055, then that effect on the ratepayer is very low. But IMEA's representation next week will probably be able to give you that number right to a T.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. No? No. You're good? Okay. Thank you, Peter.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, item 5B, recommendation to amend city code 13.08.320 to equalize credits earned by customers solar-produced kilowatt returned to the city's distribution system for city rates 1 and 3.
Long, sorry. Good evening. This is all about the credits for anybody that has a solar installation, what we pay them for the electricity they put back on our grid, which is a small amount of what they produce because most of it goes to their own use. So St. Charles has always done it on a cost basis. For years, we gave people the credit of what we paid for electricity. And in fact, all of our higher rates, the CEJA Act is basically, it's got certain rules to it, but it's basically focused on residential and very small commercial. And that's our rates 1 and 3 as referenced in there. Everything above that rate, and we have customers, industrial and commercial on we pay them exactly what they pay for electricity from us, exactly. But when you go above residential and small commercial, there's another component to our rate structure, okay? It's not just what you pay kilowatt hour energy, there's the strain and the peak demand you put on the system and the capacity charges, right? And for us, those are called demand, every utility, they're called demand charges. And so we don't credit any demand costs back to anybody for solar, what they produce. We pay them for the energies like we pay for it. So when you come down to residential, we paid it that way until the Illinois CEJA Act, and they dictated a formula to use to calculate, they term it a fair credit solar. When that started, I was amazed that they were going through this trouble until I heard a lot of stories elsewhere in the state that there were utilities and co-ops charging their customers just to have the solar. So I began to understand why the law was needed, right? And that's the best that they came up with. Well, for the first time here this year, because these rates are set annually, for the first time, the calculated rate with CEJA is like half of the cost of our electricity that we pay. And so actually a resident in St. Charles had a long discussion with me. He had discussions with state legislature and so forth. But he posed it to me that, so what you're telling me is you buy electricity and have to pay for what you get out of IMEA. And we're giving you energy now under this new rate, and you're paying us half as much. So you are making money on my solar going back on the grid. And in a common sense approach, that's a concern, right? And so Pete and I discussed this and decided that maybe we should just, whatever is the higher rate, whether it's the cost of our electricity from the previous year or the CEJA rate, that's what we should be reimbursing our residents and small commercial. That's the gist, the summary of what this is about.
Just had a quick question. Going back to the rates, I believe you said for a 10K line, it's $1,500 for the customer to hook up. Is that correct?
No, not at all.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In the CEJA Act, it has limits on what a utility can cause that customer if there's complications to the system to be able to connect them and so forth. The only thing that St. Charles charges a solar customer to come on, which was defined in our city code, which came out of CEJA, there's two charges. One has to do with the meter, and the other is the interconnection, which is putting it onto our system. Prior to CEJA, we didn't charge anybody an interconnection to get on it, but pretty much the rest of the state does, so we instituted those two charges. If it's less, if 10 kW or less, it's a $200 charge, one-time charge, and if it's more, it's a $300 one-time charge. The deal with the meter is St. Charles is not on smart meters, you know, AMI yet. Eventually, it's a huge expense and time frame, but without that, we have no ability as a utility to see what customers are putting back on our grid. We certainly aren't going to take providers and customers' word on what they gave us back, right? We have to monitor all of that. So those meters have data recording capabilities, and they read energy in both directions. That's a $350 charge, one time up front again. So those are the only two charges that the utility charges any customer for, large or small.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have one question. Paul, to calculate these numbers, does it require any extra effort internally to calculate these, to get their money back to them or their credits?
No. So the way that's all done, so and if you don't mind, just quick history on it. So when years ago we started getting solar put in town, because we don't have smart meters, the only way we can get the data, put a meter in, we have to send a technician out with a laptop and download that. And previous management in the city said, well, they're going to have to pay something to have that read. And he calculated out, it was way less than it would cost us, but $25 to read. And he said it's ridiculous to expect any residential customer to pay $25 every month out of what excess solar is being produced. So that set us up for quarterly readings. Now, when I took the position that I'm in, when I was asked to take it, I eliminated the $25 charge. But we have stayed with the quarterly readings. So our meters that read the solar stuff, they're read every month for what the city puts out at the house, but what's returned to our grid, we read in calendar 3-month periods. And I get that downloaded, it goes on a spreadsheet to me, and I calculate exactly what credits were earned and what rate we pay it back. And that goes on that customer's next bill, which is another. So we end a calendar quarter. Within a week or a week and a half, we read it. I do the calculations. I send it to utility billing. A given customer might already be billed for the next month before that credit hits, right? But they'll get either that bill or the next one after, and that's how the credits make it to them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
What we do when we download the figures, we don't just record and download what the customers excess back to us. It shows what the utility gives the customer every half hour for 90 days. And the benefit of that, and for the customers that want it, I share that spreadsheet with them, because the benefit is it gives a customer a chance to see what their usage patterns are, when they're using energy or not. Maybe they could use more during the day with solar. We just do that automatically for the customers. So,
thank you.
Sure.
So I believe we have a motion by Brian, second by Jamie. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Tim. The floor is yours.
Maybe the floor is mine. There we go. Sorry. Where did the Zoom go?
Is it sharing? It's actually the PowerPoint is what it's the sharing on Zoom that's not there. You have to kind of go pick up when you don't. There we go. Bingo. Now it's working? Okay. Great. All right, so here we are again talking about lead service lines. So just a recap on our
Lead line replacement timeline, we are in the green area. Really our goal tonight is talk about the draft plan that we were required to submit to the Illinois EPA, and we submitted the draft inventory list to them on May 1st. Right after that, the EPA surprised us with a required notification, a health advisory notification. I'm not going to touch base much about that tonight, but if you got a couple questions at the end of the presentation, feel free to ask. You will notice that we do have an area here highlighted in yellow. That's we are waiting for the Illinois EPA to hold a public hearing. We're waiting for documentation from them so we can hold that hearing. They are actually currently waiting for documentation from Army Corps so they can issue us the public hearing paperwork, so we can hopefully apply for loans in the future. All right, lead service line, where is it located? Again, a real quick recap. It's the water pipe from the main to the house. It could be made of lead. Just to be clear, this is a question we received over the last couple of days. Is there lead in our source water? No, there's not lead in our source water. The water we pump out of the ground is lead-free. Lead is in the drinking water as it makes contact with those lead pipes. It can pull some of that lead into the drinking water, and or if it makes contact to the plumbing fixtures, that's where the lead comes from, in the drinking water. Overall, let's just kind of overall map of the entire city, corporate boundary, far right corner here, you'll see the DuPage Airport, river down the center, far western boundary, far northern boundary. This is just a quick glimpse. Currently, where we have confirmed lead is in pink, and non-confirmed lead is in green. So again, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. USA proposed lead and copper rules. They published some draft rules this last December. Expected rules should come out this October. So the one big one is really modifying our lead replacement timeline from 30 years to 10 years, and then full lead line replacement. That was one of the big reasons we pushed for a policy that the City Council approved 2 months ago. Lead line inventory is our full lead line inventory is due this October. We're doing fairly well at that. We have 500 unknowns. We got staff working all summer to figure out those unknowns. Overall, improving water quality testing is going to be a new requirement. Lowering the lead level of water quality from 15 to 10. Again, I want to just make this statement clear, the city has not failed lead line testing. We continue to come below the 15 current ruling, okay? Next one. Okay, the Illinois replacement plan requirements. Expected rules is supposed to come out this July, but as part of this draft plan we submitted, they actually made us implement a lot of the same strategies that they're going to be releasing this next couple months. Really, it's going to drive where we can replace lead service lines at. You know, where we can start, where we can kind of target certain parts of the community off several different factors. The first factor is what we call the high-risk facilities. I put a couple fiscal years there next to that high-risk area. That's where we're looking at taking care of those facilities if they have lead. Preschools is on there. Parks, playgrounds, hospital clinics, and licensed daycares. They have to be licensed to the state. Currently, we already had this conversation with the school district. We're working the school district over the next couple of months to get into every facility and identify what the service line material is. Currently, the school district doesn't think they have any lead service lines, but we're going to verify each location. I have a meeting with the St.Charles Park District actually this week to talk about all the parks, going to all the parks to identify lead service lines if there is any. Same with our own staff in the playgrounds. We will be sending individual letters to hospital clinics and licensed daycares, and those are some of the single-family homes that are licensed daycares. We send them individual letters notifying them that we'll have to be replacing their lead service line within the next year. So these are our target locations. These are the ones that are going to be on the top of the list for the Illinois EPA. The next one is really what the rest of this presentation is. It's a very complicated, basically math problem, where they look at the census matrix and they look at all these, what I have here listed. They score each region of the community. They give it a points scoring, and then we add them all up, and that kind of identifies what region we need to start in. And I'm going to explain all that. But that's really where we're going to be starting in fiscal year 26-27. Besides these two priority areas, there's some other laws that require us to complete lead service line replacements. Anytime we have an emergency leak on a lead service line or a damaged service line from, it could be anything. It could be a plumbing contractor. It could be, just some other incident that maybe require, damage of water service on the outside. The city is required to replace that lead service line within 30 days. We can come do an emergency repair right away, but within 30 days, I got to do a full lead line replacement. The next ruling, it's in the EPA's logbooks, is really any time we're doing a water main replacement and or sanitary replacement that will really impact the lead service line. So if I'm running a new water main down the road and it's got a lead service line, I have to replace that lead service line. I can't just do half of it, or I can't just skip over it. They won't even sign permits anymore. Road projects is really going to be defined on how much financing we have available, like MFT projects where we're resurfacing. If we have funds available, we will look at replacing lead service lines because it makes sense. If we got the road opened up, we replace the lead service line, we got the opportunity. But we may not be able to do that in every situation just because overall funding and every year the annual budget. And any other impacts or projects that may impact a water service line, private development, some examples. And obviously the two priority replacement programs provided by the EPA. So this is just one slide on the high-risk facilities. This is just showing there's parcels where we have already identified where a lot of those high-risk facilities are at. Again, there's not too much to discuss about it. We've been working with each one of these individuals and the two neighboring, the park district and the school district to kind of identify and verify if those are actual lead service lines. Census tract. So we're going to go into the census tract conversation, which is really going to drive the rest of the slides. All the slides are going to be in the same layout. You'll have the DuPage Airport, your far right-hand corner. You'll have the river. You got your far left here side is the community, is the far western side of the community. You can kind of make out Main Street kind of comes to the center here, so I kind of give you an idea where we're at. And I believe Randall, here's Randall Road here again. So overall, the city of St. Charles has 13 different census tracts. So how this works is a geographical boundary. It's kind of the community's broken up. And depending on what we're looking at, it could be based off salary, it could be based off percentages, and I'll go through each one of those as we work through the slide. This colorization here is just kind of be able to see so the team can see kind of where the different tracts are at. All right, the first one, which is a key one, and I put these in order. So as we go through the slides, they're the same order the EPA looks at it, from the highest priority to the lowest priority. So the highest priority is median household income in the city of St. Charles. If you're looking at the slide, all the pink dots are the confirmed lead service lines, and the darker colors on every slide is higher scoring, and the lighter color is the lowest scoring. As you can see, they have median household income ranges. Again, all these ranges or percentages are provided by the EPA, so they give us a 59, 962 to the 79, and they give us the next step and next step, next step. You can see here for this one, the center southern portion of the community has the lowest median household income. But I will note that unfortunately the city of St. Charles really hurts us, and this is where we really have a hard time getting some of the free money. For example, there's money available right now for inventory, but the problem is your median household income needs to be below 50,000. We have none of our community has median household income below 50,000. It's also one of the highest scores for receiving free money or grant money. So this is one of the challenges we have in St. Charles. Next one is children under 6 with confirmed lead service lines. So again, this is the percentage of the area. So this area, the dark green, has a 7 to 11% households with lead service lines have in that region have confirmed lead. Again, this is Randall Road, kind of give you an idea where you're at, Main Street, and this is, you guys should kind of see is kind of, this is Main Street here, yeah. Next one is poverty levels. Now this is individual poverty levels, not based off the house. Again, there's percentage levels provided by the EPA. Darker is higher, lighter color is lower. Again, we're looking at the south. There's kind of the central region of the community. Unemployment levels. So again, remember, this is 2020 census. So the next 2 slides, we actually have 2 areas that ranked or even provided census data. For this first one was unemployment, was 0 to 3.6%. It was in the far eastern side of the community and the far northwestern side. Social Security, same thing. This is reporting Social Security. You notice the same trend. Minority households with confirmed lead service lines. This is, again, based off a percentage of the community served in that region. Limited English household confirmed lead service lines. And then we're getting to the last couple here. Last 2 is supplementing security, Social Security income with confirmed lead service lines. Again, we have the southern central area and the far northeastern area, but you can also see there's not that many lead service lines in both these 2 higher locations. Homes built before 1990, which would make sense. Obviously, the older homes will have lead service lines. Again, it's the older part of the city within the kind of the central valley, I would call it. So how does this all work? So you take all those maps, take all this data, and you put it and compile it into the scoring like I was discussing. So what you're looking at is each census tract, the number in each census tract. Here you're looking at is the actual the scoring matrix. So here's your median household income. You can here see this is a score that is provided. Again, we don't make up these numbers. We don't make up these scoring. This is all EPA driven, recommended driven scoring. So here's an example of median household income. The city of St. Charles received no points for that. Children under 6, you can see where you have the score next to it, poverty, and it continues to your right. Here is the total score, and here is the number of confirmed lead services within that region. So it kind of give you an idea. Now, what we did when we submitted the EPA, because some of the scoring is very close, you can see within a couple points, we actually gave them, for this first review, we grouped them together. So we were suggesting that we would start in these 2 first census tracts for lead line replacement. Once these are completed, we move on to the next 3, and so on. So these colors are going to match up with the map on the next page. So there you go. So where we starting lead service line replacement with based off the census tract is basically your south central area. We'll move across the river to your southeastern area. We'll move into the darker red areas, darker orange, lighter orange, and then finally the white areas is what we are proposing for now. So you see a priority 1, Bay Fawcett census tract scoring, priority 2, 3, 4, and 5. Why is this important? Why am I telling you this all today? Because it's all part of this lead line replacement comprehensive plan, which is a public document. So you're going to get asked about it. It's been submitted to EPA. It's going to be public. Eventually, we'll put it on our website after we have the final conversation with the park district and the school district, and maybe do some other modifications to our website, but it'll be available. So if it's available, you're going to get questions. As a reminder, we are required to turn this in on May 1st, but the EPA has a year and a half to review it. We have to wait for their review comments before we modify it. Based on their comments, our final documents due in 2027. As far as, again, just kind of go over where we're at as far as funding, full lead line replacement funds. This year we have $100,000. That's really just take care of the emergency leaking lead service lines. Next year we have $300,000. That may change based off our survey with the school district, the individual homes, but that's going to be the priority high risk areas we're tackling with that $300,000. And the third year we have $3.5 million, which is required, the start of our required replacement program, which will start to roll into that census tract matrix. You're going to start asking about individual streets that we're picking. So far, we don't have any of that planned out. We will be working on that. We'll be working with our street team. We'll be working with some other teams. If there's some opportunities to take care of a couple of streets together with a street program, we're going to do that. But we'll be working on those plans over the next couple of years. Staff will continue to look for, state funding opportunities, monitor proposed law and policy changes. Again, here's our list of really the 4 areas we're targeting for lead line replacement. And I always would encourage everyone to send everyone to our website to find additional information about lead lines. On that, I'll open up to any questions.
Does this include galvanized pipes too?
Yeah, and I need to change my verbiage. It's lead line and galvanized.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
50%? Good.
I was just wondering,
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if we could have some of what's in this presentation directly on the website to make it a little easier to point in.
What we'll do is, I think one of the goals was to try and put up a couple of our presentations we had so people can reference them. I mean, it's all available to the public.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 5D, recommendation to approve a resolution authorizing a construction contract for the Swenson Avenue Base Reclamation Project. Good evening.
Good evening. Swenson Avenue is an industrial street on the east side of town. Its condition is ranked as one of the 10 worst streets in our town, and it is because the base is made of a pozzolanic material that is very low strength. What we're proposing is using base reclamation with cement, which is a tried and tested method of strengthening the road base. We've done it on a number of industrial streets such as Ohio, 37th, 38th, and Production in the past. And so we're recommending using that method to reconstruct Swenson. It will have minimal impact on the businesses, and we have reached out to each one of the businesses already to coordinate our schedule, our construction schedule, with theirs. And so I'm recommending approval of a contract with Geneva Construction, who's done this work for us a number of times in the past.
Yeah, timeline on completion?
The timeline, we are starting in June, paving in August.
And the previous 3 years, have there been any concerns, any complaints, like, hey, they gotta come back, redo, or have these stood with the work you're hoping to get?
They have stood up to what we expect.
Okay, thank you.
It's a great product.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, so I got a motion by Jamie, seconded by David. Roll call, please.
Weber?
Yes.
Yes.
Schultz?
Yes.
Munn?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Sherlund?
Yes.
Wirball?
Yes.
Reichner?
Yes.
All right, passes. Thank you. Item 5E, recommendation to approve a resolution authorizing a construction contract for Prairie Street Bridge repairs.
Yes, every 4 years, we survey the Prairie Street Bridge. We inspect it just for general condition, and so our consultant has recommended a number of just standard maintenance tasks like crack filling and sealing of the bridge deck that need to be done just to maintain the condition of the bridge. The main reason we bring this up is that it will require closure of the Prairie Bridge for between 6 and 8 weeks. I've reached out to the police department, fire department, special events committee, business alliance to coordinate these dates and make sure that there will not be any problems with any special events. And we have written it specifically into the contract that the bridge needs to be opened by 4 p.m. on Wednesday, July 3rd, and remain open through the entire 4th of July weekend to allow for holiday traffic and also for police and fire staging for the fireworks.
Move for approval.
I have a question,
Oh.
just related to the pedestrian bike plan. Are there, as these repairs are done, will there be any implementation of anything that is planned for the Prairie Street Bridge regarding any bike lanes or anything that is in that plan?
There's no recommendations for any lanes or any changes on the bridge in the bike plan, and we won't be doing anything like that. It's all just standard maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we're going with a new contractor on this, right?
Yes, sir.
Are we confident that, since we never used them, that they will perform to our standards?
Yes, we've called all of their references, and all of them had very positive things to say.
Okay, thank
So
you.
they're not a new contractor, they're just new to us.
New to us, okay, thank you.
Move for approval.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you, that passes. And then item 5G, recommendation to approve a resolution authorizing the purchase of vehicles and equipment budgeted in fiscal year '24 and the sale or trade of corresponding vehicles to be replaced.
Good evening.
I don't think we made that tough.
We did forget F, but I'm happy to go so you don't have to repeat that.
Thank you.
All right. So we had 25 units budgeted for replacement this fiscal year to replace vehicles, equipment, and trailers, and to fill operational needs throughout all city departments. In recent years, my messaging when giving this presentation has been mostly doom and gloom about lack of availability, and for fleet vehicles and squad cars, that's mostly still true. But I'm saying it optimistically tonight because last year when I made this presentation, this committee told me to go make relationships, develop assets, and leverage those relationships to get the trucks, and that's exactly what we've done. So we've worked with local dealerships and dealerships as far as central Indiana to be able to source the vehicles that we need, especially the squad cars and the EMS vehicles for fire. They're a little bit more specialized. You know, we're seeing dealership lots filling up pretty quickly, but if you go walk around those lots, they're optioned beyond what a fleet vehicle you would typically expect. You're finding a lot more creature comforts than what we would purchase in our vehicles, higher margin things for the dealership. So we're going out, we're finding fleet vehicles and bringing them in. On the larger construction side, where we've been seeing 12-month lead times just for chassis and another 12 to 18 months for upfitting services, we're finding chassis more readily available, not through every manufacturer, but we're exploring different manufacturers to get plow trucks in and running, larger utility trucks in and running. You're going to notice some of the items on the list we've seen before. There are 4 larger vehicles that are rebudgets from last year. You know, the 1 or 2 staunch examples would be our electric line trucks. We're entering year 3 of a 40-month lead time waiting to replace those. So we are patient. We're maintaining open lines of communication with those upfitters, you know, scratching, clawing at every opportunity we get to move up the list. But we're ready to play it back again this year and build off our successes and source some trucks.
Move approval?
Second.
Moved by Jamie, second by Ed. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, that passes. now item 5F, sorry. A recommendation to approve a resolution authorizing a construction contract for the Riverside Culvert Improvements Project.
The Riverside Culvert Replacement Project is the next step in our 7th Avenue Creek Flood Reduction Project. Before we can do any further flood reduction projects upstream, we have to take care of the last culvert downstream, which is at Riverside, just north of Moore. And so this project is replacing the current undersized culvert with a properly sized culvert. We'll also be remeandering the creek, similarly to what we did in the 7th Avenue Creek project 2 years ago, though not nearly so extensively. We'll also be reconnecting or adding an additional water main connection for greater resilience in the area, and we will be taking the bike crossing that's currently at a skew, and we'll be changing that to a 90-degree crossing, which puts bicyclists and pedestrians in the road for significantly less time, making it a safer trail. The project will close Route 25, written in the contract, for no more than 5 weeks. And so the project is anticipated to start in July. The actual closure dates are to be determined. We have to wait for the railroad work in Geneva on Illinois 31 to be complete before we can close 25. And so those dates are still up in the air, but we will not have the trail and the road closed for more than 5 weeks per contract. And the project itself will be completed by November of this year. Because of Route 25 being closed, we will have a lot of advanced messaging, not just message boards, but social media and a project website, that sort of information to alert people of the detour and to just help coordinate.
Question? Yeah.
So you mentioned improving the crosswalk for biking and pedestrian access. Is it just going to be changing the configuration, or are you going to put signage there with lights, or I mean, I think it's an opportunity to really improve that intersection because it's really dangerous over there.
Right now, it's just a configuration change from being a skewed crossing that has people in the road for a significant amount of time to a 90-degree crossing. I think it reduces. It's been a while since I looked at 20 to 25 feet of feet in the roadway for each crossing.
If you do need to do additional signage, is that something you have to go through IDOT because it's?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
I know with these closings on 25, it causes a lot of extra traffic to come through, mainly parts of the 4th Ward up into the 1st Ward, and a lot of traffic and a lot of speeding traffic. I guess it's more toward the chief. Chief, is there any way during this time more of a police presence can be over in that area for drivers and their recklessness during this street closure period? Because I know we've noticed that with the last time 25 was closed. I think, not to put them on the spot, probably Brian and David would agree, we get many complaints about speeding. And
yeah, mostly more.
Yeah. So is there a chance we could get something put in place just so at least residents can know like there will be more of a presence to try to slow drivers down?
Absolutely. We'll work in concert with the Public Works Department to schedule several patrols and hopefully see reduction of the intersection.
Awesome. Thank you.
Quick question. And I'm glad you mentioned, I was going to ask this question about Route 31, so you're not going to start until that is opened again?
Correct.
In Geneva by the bridge?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay,
Coordinating with the county and IDOT, we need to wait until 31 is
Thank you.
open.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved by David, seconded by Jamie. Roll call, please. Sorry.
Yes.
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 All right, thank you, that passes. Item 5H, recommendation to approve a resolution awarding a proposal for supervisory control and data acquisition management to Concentric Integration.
So this contract is basically continuing work that they've been doing in the past to finalize our upgrading our SCADA system, make sure we're on secured servers and et cetera. The contract is also for professional services and equipment. So it's kind of a mix. I think there was maybe a couple questions about it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm the one that pulled it off.
Yep.
I agree with everything, except my only question is, why are we putting a $300,000 project on omnibus vote? To me, that should be a roll call vote for that amount of money. That was why I pulled it off for. I think that's way too, in my opinion, that ending that high should be a roll call vote instead of omnibus
We'll
vote.
take that in consideration, we'll look at it, we'll talk to the team, so.
Yeah, I'm just saying, that was why I pulled it off for, because I think the dollar amount is way too high for omnibus vote. It should be a voice vote, and if anybody has any questions. Thank you. That was mine.
You mentioned this is phase 3. How many more phases after this?
This is the last big phase that takes care of the main wastewater plant. There's always, so it's just like any SCADA network. There's always going to be expense in the future. I think don't hold me to this. I got to think about our out years in the budget. I think it reduces to 100,000 a year, and just basically renewing and replacing equipment that's aging. So when we did this big major swap, it was really to get us over to secured servers, servers that can't or don't even touch the outer networks. It didn't touch every piece of equipment. It's a major asset. So there's going to be continued replacement. You know, it's like any computer component. Okay. You know, just got to get replaced.
Thank you.
Move approval?
Second.
Moved by Jamie, seconded by Brian. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 All right, thank you, that passes. Item 5K, a recommendation to approve a budget addition to replace a 32-foot dump trailer.
Yep, so this is replace a dump trailer that was damaged. Due to the timing of everything, insurance claims, we weren't unable to get it in last year's budget before it got approved. So that's why we're requesting the approval of a budget add. Any questions?
I do. My question is, I'd like to know, where's that money coming from? Out of what budget? Because it's not budgeted, so where's the money?
It's going to be coming out of the water budget. We did get an insurance claim, what we had listed there. So the remainder between the two will be
$31,000.
Actually, sorry, I apologize. It's the wastewater budget, not the water budget. Wastewater budget.
Okay. I'm saying I would like to know where the money is coming from. If something is mostly not budgeted.
Revenue.
You know, I mean, if we could put that in there, then I wouldn't have to ask the question.
Gotcha.
Okay. Thank you.
Looking for a motion.
Second.
Moved by Bob, seconded by Brian. Roll call, please.
Weber, yes.
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 All right, that passes. And then last but not least, 5O, a recommendation to approve a contract change order to Martin Construction for IDOT right-of-way work for First Street Plaza project. Good evening.
Good evening. Is it late enough for you?
Getting there.
So we did get some feedback from the Illinois Department of Transportation on our last permit submittal. Unfortunately, that did not include a permit. However, it did include several expensive changes to our original design, which resulted in said change order. So I'm happy to answer any questions that any of the committee members have at this time.
Okay, so I have several. When will the project start? And then how long will it take? And will access from the north be blocked for pedestrians to come in with this project taking place? Will it impact businesses over there?
I can't tell you when the project will start because I can't tell you when we're going to get that permit. But once the permit comes in, I'll begin coordination with the contractor to understand what their schedule is. Unfortunately, at this time, the contractor is obviously completely demobilized from the site and is on to other projects. So I've been keeping in contact with them as we move through the punch-out process on the rest of the project. But until that permit comes in, I won't even be able to talk to them.
Do you have any idea, though, like when the permit comes in, like the time to do
That
something
will all
like?
depend on the contractor's schedule, but if I had to guess at this point, it's going to be sometime this fall.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
In terms of disruption to business and how long, I don't think it's going to take that much time. However, part of the cost, I don't know if you noticed this, is a dramatic increase in traffic control. And the reason for that is because it requires 13 independent lane closures to complete the work. So while there is a big disruption in traffic, it's a short duration lane closure. So the state's permit conditions often say, you can only work between 9 and 3, so that results in a substantial amount of traffic.
And then is this project going to coincide with the west side plaza where you make the opening in the archway? Are those going to happen at the same time for economies of scale to kind of utilize the same contractor, or is that a separate?
Yes, so we had originally talked with Martam Construction about performing that work on the west side, and they're still willing to do that when they remobilize to do the work inside the IDOT right away. So
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Move for approval on that.
Second.
Just one more comment.
I'm sorry,
No?
Ron then Bob.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Again, as I mentioned, it's $100,000, and it was on this vote, and it doesn't say where the money's coming from. It doesn't
The
list anywhere.
money's in the budget.
It says it's budget amount 0.
I'm sorry, that's a typo then. I forgot to put the budget amount in there. But the budget, the money is in this current fiscal year budget.
Okay,
We
that's
did
my
budget for it,
question.
anticipating that the work didn't get completed
Okay,
last
'cause it
year.
was-
So I apologize for that, but
That's
it is
okay.
in the, it is in the budget.
You answered my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, I was just gonna, I thank you for clarifying that, because
Yeah.
I thought maybe IDOT was costing us more money from their coming back with, but if it's budgeted, then we anticipated, so.
Well, they are costing us $100,000 more.
But
So just to be clear, but we put that in the budget
right.
anticipating that there would be additional costs.
So with that, I guess with that being said, it doesn't hurt it doesn't hurt as bad knowing that we budgeted. My understanding is they said, we didn't anticipate originally that we had to get an engineer, right, to do this, to finish this up, and now they're coming back with more. Do you feel, in your professional opinion, are they going to give us more, are they giving us the runaround? Is your team getting the runaround from IDOT, basically? Or are we anticipating any more delays? Because it seems to me that this should be, I mean, it's IDOT, I get it, but it's just, what's the next step with IDOT? Are they just going to approve it, or are we going to have to get more comments from them? I mean, do we need to start like reaching out to state representatives and stuff like this to get this done? I don't know.
That's a great question. I'm not prepared to answer whether or not you want to reach out to your state rep or not.
I am.
but-
I can take that one, Chris.
Sure.
We've actually been in contact with senators and representatives on this exact issue. Part of the delay that we've experienced with IDOT, I think I heard last count, they were understaffed by, I think they have about 400 engineers, and I think 200 is what they were staffed at. So everybody is dealing with some of these delays, and it's an engineering issue that's causing those ultimate delays. So we have been working with our representatives and senators to try to get as quick of a resolution on this as we can. It's just a staffing issue and what they can turn around.
I get it. I just, again, it was budgeted. I'm just like, I just don't want them to cost the city more money, so.
Yeah, so the first part of your,
Yeah,
I don't think I
delays.
answered the first part of your question. There were a couple there. What was it? Can you repeat it for me? I'm sorry.
I basically was just curious if we were gonna have to go to a state rep or something. You answered my
Oh,
question.
additional
I'm good.
engineering, that's right.
Yeah, that
there was some
that's- yeah.
substantial changes to
Right.
the original engineering that was designed for the intersection.
And that was unanticipated, so that IDOT was like, kind of threw us a
It's
wrench
been
in
the
our-
experience of our consulting engineer that this is not the norm. That's all that they share with me, so that's all I can really share with you, is that in their experience, and we've worked with them for a long time, they have never experienced a permitting timeline quite like this one. So that's about all the information I can share with you in terms of their opinion. My professional opinion, I've never experienced a permitting to take this long, but there were some substantial changes, including some pretty nice pedestrian and ADA improvements to the signals, which is great. And there were some other maintenance items that IDOT wanted included, some non-standard poles switched out and things that we didn't anticipate during the original design, and they'll certainly cost dollars in lead time. So that's the other thing, since I'm here and I'm speaking to you. Part of the reason I wanted to get the change order in front of the committee tonight in order for us to order long lead time electrical components once it passes the city council approval. So even though we may not have a permit, I would still like to get our electrical contractor to get those orders in so that we can start ticking away at that lead time. And that also feeds into the other question about timing. So as part of re-optimizing the signals, swapping out some of the poles, changing out some of the signal heads, and adjusting all the interconnects, there's quite a bit of electronics as part of that. So.
I made a motion
You
already.
made a motion. Second. All right, moved by Brian, seconded by Bob. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Thank you, that passes. Item 6, public comments. Anybody want to get up and share? Come on up. If you could just share your name. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Russo, and I am a resident of Batavia. Tonight, you have been presented with potential options as alternatives to renewing the city's contract with IMEA through 2055. I would like to address in more detail the option to purchase energy from one source and operational services from another source. I am here to remind you that both Batavia and Geneva have long-term power purchase agreements with the Northern Illinois Municipal Power Agency, or NIMPA, for their electricity and contract for their operational services from other sources. Geneva contracts with ISC Inc., a branch of the Indiana Municipal Power Agency, or IMPA, for those services, and Batavia contracts with Avant Energy Inc. out of Minneapolis, Minnesota for these services. Batavia first contracted with Avant Energy for these services in 2015, when IMPA terminated its contract with Batavia because it was transferring these services to its ISC branch. Before selecting Avant Energy, Batavia considered proposals from ISC Inc., American Municipal Power Inc., and the Energy Authority. The initial 3-year contract with Avant Energy provided for a one-time fee of $53,000 to ensure a smooth transition from IMPA, and an annual not-to-exceed fee of $240,000 for operational services. The contract with Avant Energy has since become an hourly rate contract. Batavia paid Avant Energy a total of $116,686 in 2023 for operational services, and are on track to pay approximately $142,000 in 2024. Some of the services provided to Batavia by Avant Energy include daily scheduling and load service, strategies concerning auction revenue rights and financial transmission rights, NERC consulting, maintaining relationships with PJM and generation resource partners, PJM billing, review services, and scheduling load transactions related to sub-accounts with PJM. When weighing whether to choose a two-contract option over IMEA's renewal contract, City Council will have to do its due diligence by obtaining proposals from both energy and service providers and comparing their costs and benefits to these provided by IMEA. As demonstrated by both Geneva and Batavia, a two-contract solution is a very workable option and worthy of consideration by St. Charles. And I would like to, while I've got the microphone, just mention one thing. I'd like to address, if you might, the comment or the statement that Mr. Sir made about carbon capture at Prairie State Energy Campus. He said IMEA has no interest in funding carbon capture system at Prairie State Energy Campus. I have heard that particular statement many times from IMEA representatives as well as NIMPA representatives, so it's not Mr. Sir's personal statement. But as you know, Prairie State Generating Company did issue about a year ago RFPs, or a proposal for RFPs, and has since entered into negotiations for memoranda of understanding with third-party investors to construct a carbon capture system at Prairie State. So when IMEA says that it has no interest in funding carbon capture at Prairie State, I find that somewhat disingenuous because they certainly are pursuing the construction of a carbon capture system at Prairie State. And as evidence of that fact, I do have public documents that show that the NIMPA president has had 34 conversations, discussions, and meetings between the time period of September 2023 through March 15th of this year that are for carbon capture systems at Prairie State and in negotiating those memoranda of understanding. So if NIMPA representative is involved in these memoranda of understanding discussions, I am quite certain that the IMEA representative is also involved in those discussions and meetings. So I just wanted to make sure that you had that information as you're considering your way forward on this whole issue. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. Debbie Monner from St. Charles. I just want to agree with what Susan said. I think you need some numbers to make an evaluation, like how much would it cost if we got our source from Constellation next to whoever, and how much would it cost if we got the same adjunctive services as Susan talked about, and compare that to the power we get from IMEA and the services we get from IMEA. I mean, I don't know how else you make a numbers-based factual decision. So I would just encourage you to pursue that, whether it's tagging on with Naperville, but somehow I think first period you did a great job, thank you. I skipped that part, I was a little rattled. But yeah, I think we need to see some numbers. I hope you agree with that. And then for the IMEA renewal option, if that's the way we decide to go or you're in that consideration, I would just suggest and ask that we have some requirements from IMEA to not accept this contract as presented, but to get some things for us. I know that Naperville's also considering that and making a list of very specific things they would like to see, so they feel good about renewing that contract if that's the way they go, and I would just like for us to do the same thing. So I had a few other comments, but I'm not going to spend my time doing it tonight because I know you're all tired. I would just ask you again to not renew the contract as is, and let's do our due diligence before we make a decision to make sure it's good for St. Charles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Kale. I'm a resident of Geneva, Illinois. I'm also not a resident of St. Charles, but like you, I also own a portion of the Prairie State Coal Plant. And the activity that's happening in Geneva will be a bear of some interest here. Geneva City Council, I think you may have heard or been aware of, has already submitted proposals, and they're collecting information now on utility-scale solar projects. So it is possible for a small city to contemplate doing some things like that. They also have a contract with NextEra for 10 years, so that if you do get involved in something like that, you aren't necessarily going to be stuck only with short-term, highly volatile contracts. Those would not be your only options. So once again, I want to thank you for letting me speak, but I also wanted to thank the council for taking the time, energy, and effort to do this. This is one of the world's largest contemplated problems ever. This is what they call wicked, crazy problem, what we're going to do about climate change and the fact that we own a coal-fired power plant, and how do we resolve that. And these communities with the long-term contracts, their bonds and their ownership agreements are in this up to their necks, and this is going to be a very difficult thing to contemplate. So if you go home tonight thinking, oh my God, we brought up a whole bunch of stuff, this is going to be tricky, you're on track to paying attention and doing a good job. It's going to take much more work than you've done tonight, and we hope that you'll have the fortitude and the will to do it. I certainly am standing here tonight so I can tell my children and my grandchildren that I came along and spoke to some people that said that they could deal with these problems. And we hope that you can get there, and we hope that actually we could help you do some of this. If you have some problems getting the community involved and concerned about you paying attention, because it's really not a high-level concern in your larger community, They're much more concerned about bread and butter issues and taxes and what's in front of them now. They're not worried about a contract that's going to expire in 10 or 15 years or what they're going to do 10 or 15 years after that. That's really on the distant horizon. But you know that these kind of things that are going to have massive impacts on all of humanity, which includes St. Charles, are going to snowball and grow. And our chance to do something significant while the costs are reasonable are now. And when I say now, I'm talking the next decade or so. Frequently that word is actually used somewhat to weaponize against those of us who are encouraging moving to renewable energies sooner rather than later by saying that we cannot do that now. I'll have to say I kind of agree with that. We cannot do that now, and that's not what we're asking for. We're asking to begin this process. You see how difficult it is. Begin this process now of studying what's involved in making this transition. How can we do that? The reason I brought this up tonight, and I'll be short in my last minute or so, is there's something interesting that happened in August of 2019. That was the month that the Department of Energy signed contracts with the Prairie Research Institute of the University of Illinois to create the FEED study, the front-end engineering and design study, to help study the cost and feasibility of building a carbon capture and sequestration plant on Prairie State. Also, in August 2019, IMEA announced that they were going to be interested in extending the contracts early for all of the residents. So they didn't say then, and they have never said since, that they are related, but you would want to be concerned that any new contracts you have would call them out on that and say, you say you're not interested in pursuing a carbon capture sequestration project. Will you say that in your contract? So that's just something to watch for there. And there was another idea, it skips my head. There were so many things that went on here tonight. I'll just go briefly over the idea of the price issue. This will haunt you forever. Price is so complicated. When your residents come, they look at the utility bill and they know what that is. They know what they pay every month. But when you're in the business of buying this stuff, you're talking about going through the market. The price of energy changes like mortgage rates every 5 or 10 minutes. And you get a bill from IMEA for the average monthly bill and then divide by the hours you use, and you say, well, that was your hourly rate. But in fact, it's a accumulation of all of these charges. So what will happen in charges going forward in the next 10, 15 years when MISO completes its first tranche of new transmission lines and there's a flood of clean energy available? You'll get into these issues of how much does the power cost? How much does the transmission cost? How much are all these other costs considered? And you have to roll them together. So tonight's presentation was very well done. I learned a lot about IMEA and how it works here. And I have no problems with IMEA. I think it's a great institution. They've done a lot of wonderful things. But IMEA was built for the purpose to do what they are doing. They were not built, they've never been charged with changing rapidly as possible. Not too fast, don't wreck the ship. Reliability is the most important thing always and everywhere. But in their haste to make sure that their business model and their concerns are stable, they've gotten themselves involved with the carbon capture project, and they're into it up to their necks. And we want to make sure that they don't get too carried away with that without making sure they find what are the other options. And it would be great if they would do that transparently and publicly. This may take several years to work through, but certainly you don't have to rush to judgment right now, sign a 15 or 20-year extension to your contract just to ameliorate some short-term concerns about buying one more solar power contract. So I think I'll stop here, give you guys a break for the night. You've done a wonderful job. Thank you very much for letting us speak with you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any additional items from council? City administrator? No, thank you. We do not have an executive session, so I'm looking for a motion.
So move. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.